A very, very good evening to all of you. I am Ravi and I am from Career Launcher. And today, as a part of our leadership series, and talks with our alumni students, today with us, I have Mr. Rishi. Mr. Rishi was Career Launcher student in 2011 2012. In 2012, he cracked CLAT and he went to HNLU Raipur for his 5-year BA program. Then he graduated from there, and he also after that he was also associated with various centers of Career Launcher as a legal aptitude trainer. And in the recent days, Mr. Rishi, it was our privilege to get in touch with Mr. Rishi again. And he's presently working in a startup legal tech as an legal associate. So today, Mr. Rishi will speak up on how is it that these law firms, the corporate law firms, are in the firms in the industry, what is it that they are doing in the COVID era, and how is it that they are embracing technology to really drive growth in this field? So, Mr. Rishi, up to you.
Uh, Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Sequence sir. It's always a pleasure to work with you. So, thank you for this opportunity. Uh, Hi. Just to give you a brief introduction, Krishna sir already covered most of it, but my name is Rishi. I graduated from law school in 2017, and for the last 3 years, I've been working with a legal tech startup called Spodra. Uh, my core functions, while I graduated as a lawyer, but I work with the founders at the founders office. And my core functions include not just include the internal legal requirements, but I'm also extensively associated with the business functions of things. And obviously, with that, I have an immense amount of exposure to how technology is essentially working with law and how not just law firms are using technology to essentially help them through their day-to-day activities, but also how companies like us are helping corporates at large in using technology to make their legal processes more efficient. Right. Just to give you, just to break down this entire session, I've made like sort of a bullet point as to what I'm going to cover. Right. So first, I'll quickly go through my law school life and why law school. Then I'll quickly recap about like how I got involved with technology in law school, and then my life after law school, and the role that technology plays in law, and how people like yourselves who are yet to get into law school should be able to use law to your technology to your advantage while you're practicing as legal professionals. Uh, so, how this entire thing started was that I actually was studying for engineering, right? And in the course, I had a friend who got into law school, and that is when was the first time I heard about CLAT. So obviously, with a lot of help from Career Launcher and with their extensive training program, I was able to clear my career CLAT exam, and I got into HNLU. Now, the reason why I chose law over everything is for multiple factors. One is that, and this is something, this is a belief that I had before I went into law school, and it's only 5 years of law school that has actually uh, cemented that belief, is that it's an educational experience, unlike anything else. It gives you a perspective of your professional lives and your personal lives in a way that no other career will be able to give you, including medicine and engineering, to be very honest, right? And over and above that, it's a professional degree that sets you apart from the rest of the crowd, especially in a country like India where you have so many engineers, but the number of lawyers that actually graduate are just like marginal, right? I'm sure like you'll have family members who would have said that, oh, look at the number of lawyers in front of the courthouses and all. But as a statistic, there are still not enough lawyers with respect to the demand that actually exists in the market, right? And given that legal awareness as such is something that is very minimal in the Indian population, that demand is only to go up as people become more aware of their legal rights. So law as a profession has not even reached its peak with respect to how many students get into that particular career every year. Uh, so uh, life at law school is essentially very fast paced, right? So you get exposed to multiple things. And obviously, once you get into law school, there's a very traditional mindset with respect to what you want to do. And at the end of the 5 years, most people choose corporate law and the other people choose to go into litigation. Obviously, there are a few that would want to get into policy and then maybe academics. But a large chunk of them would want to get into law firms and litigation firms, where you either go to the court or you function as a transactional lawyer, where you advise clients before any dispute arises. Right now, all of these careers that I just mentioned to you, they are largely very traditional, and uh, they still work on pen paper, right? So while the entire country has essentially, or the entire world is now talking about flying cars, right? The biggest technological innovation that any lawyer would use throughout their entire career is track changes on Microsoft Word, which came out in 1995, right? And to give due credit, this is not something that I came up with. This is something that my boss from my current work who uses it as a pitch whenever we try and go and raise funds. And it works really well, right? Because it's a matter of fact. So, uh, given that I had a science background, right? So I was always interested in technology, right? And given that like that interest of technology is something that I did not let go of throughout my law school. I was primarily driven in trying to understand how technology would work with a conventional profession like law, right? Now, through this entire process, what had happened was that I had done multiple internships. I had done, and this is something again unique to law, right? Is that you get to intern twice every year. So at the end of 5 years, you've essentially gone and interned at 10 different places, and this gives you a wide variety of experience. And most people at the end of 5 years know what they like and what they don't like, so that way they're way more clear with respect to how they want to approach their future, right, with respect to their professional lives. So uh, during my internships, I had obviously worked with a lot of law firms. I had worked with not done too many litigation, primarily because it doesn't pay very well initially, right? But it's very rewarding after a while. And Right. And if it's okay, I'll just take up the questions once I just cover a few segments. So I'll stop for questions and then you guys can shoot out your questions then, and then I'll take it up. I see that a few of them have already come in. So just give me a moment while I just finish my thought process, and then I'll take up those questions. I hope that's fine. So during my internship career, essentially, I had interned with a stock exchange, a future stock exchange. It's called National Commodities and Derivatives Exchange, which is based out of Mumbai. It's one of the few commodities exchange that exists in the country, one of the larger ones. And that was my first experience with like technology and financial regulations, right? So that's where I saw like how technology could interact with law. And I spent like the rest of my law school writing and researching a lot about the intersection of financial regulations and technology. And I was fairly certain that that's something that I want to like pick up as a career. And that's how it went about it. So the point being that it is only through the internships that I undertook was how I was able to ascertain, okay, fine, how do I want to approach my future with respect to what careers I'd want to take up. Right. So I'll just take a quick break here and I'll just address the questions. So the first one is, can you focus more on how to crack CLAT in the first place? I don't think that's the ambit of this discussion here, but person who's better placed to answer this question very honestly is the person who's hosting this discussion. So I think he's the right person to address or direct these questions to. But in my personal opinion, given that I have taken like the engineering exams also and also CLAT is a far easier exam, so I don't think that's something that anyone should be worrying about. It's very conceptual, right? The math is very easy. General knowledge is something that it's like the more you know, the better, right? And the end of it, legal aptitude is also very logical, right? You don't need any. It's just practice, and it's those small tricks that places like Career Launcher can just like quickly help you to like pick up, right? So uh, those are, I mean, that's how I would approach how I crack CLAT, right? Just practice and guidance, right? Is Python useful for law students? I mean, sure, it's a good thing to have. Actually, I'll come back to this in a bit, right? This is a segment that I want to discuss, right? So, if you don't mind, Karthikeya, I'll just take this up question towards the end of it.
Rishi, let's first complete whatever you want to speak about. Then let's have a 15-20 minute question answers, and I'll shoot those questions to you, and we can have a conversation over it, right?
Sounds good. That also works for me, right? Great. So, essentially, that is how I approached the idea of how technology would interact with law. Post law school, given that I knew that this is a conventional career is not something that I wanted, right? Given that I knew that I didn't want to work with a corporate law firm or a litigation firm, my primary approach was to like engage or to reach out to uh, uh, like to companies that were working in the intersection of law and technology. So I had the opportunity to interact with a lot of them, and fortunately, I at the end of it was able to work with a company called SpotDraft, which essentially is building out technology which would analyze and review documents, legal contracts for corporates as well as law firms, right? And I was the first employee in the company, and for the last 3 years, I've essentially helped the founders of the company build the company from scratch. And my experience has not just been with respect to what legal matters exist in the company, but fortunately, I've also been able to handle a lot of business matters, which is something that I was interested in. Right now, given my experience with technology, I just quickly want to talk about the scope of technology in law. Right now, I'm not sure if you guys keep up with the latest developments in AI, machine learning, and on that vertical, but a lot of work that today is happening by large open source AI companies is with respect to how could you have like a model that could understand text in a document, right? If any of you want to like maybe after the session want to go up and take a quick reading, you could look up something called GPT-2 or GPT-3, which is essentially been released by an open source AI company, which is co-founded by Elon Musk, if that piques your interest, right? And that's immensely powerful, right? It essentially what it could do is that just by looking at a document, you could just ask questions to that particular model, and the model looks through that document and then answers those questions to you fairly accurately. Obviously, it hasn't gotten to the point where it will be able to give legal advice, but can it augment the functions of a lawyer? Absolutely, right? Now, there are various places in which law technology functions with law, right? Now, like I mentioned, after law school, there are multiple things you could do, right? There is something called litigation, which is essentially where you appear in front of the court and you fight a case out. There is something called transactional law, which is essentially where you advise lawyers and advise companies or individuals before any dispute arises, right? These are largely like the two areas that people go into. Now, technology has been playing a huge role in both these segments, right? With respect to litigation, you have technology, you have a lot of companies that have come out with the ability to analyze cases. So assume that tomorrow I had a case which talks about fundamental rights, right? And I wanted to find out which case is most relevant to the case that I'm currently handling. instead of having to go down and read like 100 odd judgments that I would normally have to do, all I have to do is like quickly look up a search item on a particular app, and they will automatically pull out those relevant cases for me, and then tell me that, okay, fine, these are the cases that you're looking for. So the advantage over here is be very clear that over here, technology is not replacing lawyers. Technology is just making lawyers' lives easier, which would mean that now the finding cases is not a lawyer's job, right? A lawyer's job is able to represent their clients best. Now, if there's something that is able to help the lawyer in doing that faster, right? That just means that the lawyer's functions are being augmented, but it does not mean that the lawyer himself or herself is being replaced, right? Similarly, if you talk about transactional law, like I just said, that this is something that the company that I work with, Spodra, that we are playing a huge role in that, where we are able to analyze documents for our the lawyers in companies and law firms. Similarly, they have other softwares or other companies which help them with respect to how they are how they're able to manage their tasks better, right? How they're able to generate more value for their customers. And at the end of it, it all loops down to the same thing, which is rather than spending a large amount of time in doing just one thing, how can I spend the same amount of time in doing multiple things, right? So this is the scope of growth that technology plays for lawyers in law firms and litigation firms. It is that they're able to augment their functions with respect to how much faster can they do the same stuff so that they can do more things, right? And this essentially comes back to the first point that I told you, that as legal awareness, as people increases, as people become more aware of their rights, the number of cases that essentially land up in front of a lawyer's table will just increase, right? And for a skilled lawyer to be able to address those cases to the best of his abilities, he or she won't be able to do it just by himself or herself. They will also need technology to help them. And uh, you guys are going into law school at the right time, because now is when the most amount of development is happening. So given that if you go to law school this year or next year or the year after that, you will be exposed to a large amount of technological innovation in legal fields that people who've been working in the same field like even 2 years or 3 years before, right, they weren't even aware of, right? So that's a lot of that's essentially a huge scope to this particular aspect. Uh, Another thing that I want to actually quickly address, right, is with respect to what can a law student do during their life in law school and maybe after that if they're interested in technology, right? Uh, I understand that this might be a little early for you to know, but obviously, I mean, like, the more the better, right? I mean, like, with respect to information, uh, exposing. So, education in law schools across India is fairly traditional, right? This is obviously not the case in your national law universities across the country and a few other national universities, which are, you could say, uh, above the crowd, right? Primarily because of the exposure that they give their students. They're more aware of what is happening across the country and what's happening outside the country. So, through this entire experience of your in your law school, you should not just stick to the conventional subjects that are being taught to you, but you should also try and look out of your regular studies and then see how can law or what is essentially impacting law with respect to maybe technology, maybe with respect to regulations, maybe with respect to policy, right? And how can law be better in all of these things, be made better in all of these things? And from my personal experience, currently in my company itself, so like I work on the business side of things, I have two other lawyers who work with me, one on the product side of things, which is traditionally an engineering role, and the other who's essentially a data scientist, right? Now, you guys might be curious about how is a lawyer a data scientist? When you're talking about legal technology, where we are trying to build AI solutions to understand legal data, a lawyer is the best person suited for being a data scientist in this situation. Do you need to know coding languages? Do you need to know Python? Do you need to know Java? Do you need to know machine learning or how to write algorithms? No. Would it help if you knew? Sure. Is this something that you can pick up while you're working at this place? Absolutely, right? So I wouldn't stress about the non-legal aspects of these roles while I'm in law school, but I would definitely keep an open mind to these things while I'm in law school, so that it's easier for me to approach these things as so that I can hit the ground running. Uh, Similarly, like on the product side, which is a traditionally an engineering role, right, or a business role, for a legal technology company, there is no person who is more suited to be a product manager than a lawyer, because we understand a legal product better than anyone else would, right? And the number of roles that exist for this kind of, or number of roles that exist today in the market is actually increasing, right? As the number of legal technology companies increase, the number of legal product or product manager roles would also increase. Similarly, the number of data scientist roles that would be available for lawyers would also increase, right? So these are alternative careers that you can definitely look out for, and these are alternative careers that law will be able to help you out with, and no other profession other than law will be able to help you out with if you're looking for these roles in legal technology companies. Uh, I hope. So I mean, like, this was a gist of what I wanted to talk about. If any of you have like very direct questions, I mean, like, I can quickly take them up and maybe elaborate more on what I just said. If you have, if there's any doubt. Yep. Uh, Sequencer, do you have any questions? I mean, like, should I start taking the questions now, or would you bounce them off me?
I'll bring those questions to you. Uh, the one very common question that keeps coming up is, I am a science student, and how will I be able to take up law as a profession, kind of things. And as your speech progressed, you said that you are a science student, and you can learn a lot of things about technology during your law school itself. uh, in the law school itself, the question is, if I'm not from a science background, will I be able to embrace the AI and the technology that is required to uh, work on data?
Yeah, absolutely, right. So I'll be very honest with everyone who's watching this. This is not meant for everyone, right? I mean, like, not everyone is interested in technology. So if you're not interested in technology, you should not hold it against yourself, right? There are multiple other roles that exist in the market today that does not need you to be interested in technology, right? For example, in our own company, you can always get into sales or marketing, right? Which you don't need to be tech savvy to be able to do those things, right? But to answer the question that Sequencer asked, will you be able to understand technology if you don't come from a technology background? Absolutely, right? I mean, so I don't know how to code, right? I don't know C++, Java, or even Python, for example, right? Uh, but at the end of it, just more than law, actually, technology is very binary. I mean, like, it's a 0 or 1 game, right? Law can be more gray. I mean, like, it's open to interpretation. It depends on how you argue the case. How do you want to show the facts to the other party, etc. But technology is very binary. I mean, so it's very easy to pick up, right? And if you're interested in it, irrespective of your background, you can always take it up. It's not going to be a problem. And over and above that, prerequisites like coding, or requisites like coding, or science background, all of these things are absolutely irrelevant, and they don't actually play a role in whether you're going to be able to take up technology and understand law vis-a-vis technology or not. I hope that answers the question, Sequencer.
Yeah. The flip side to that question is, I am a science student. How will I perform inside a law school?
Very well, actually. I'm glad you asked this flip side because I want to quickly give a small anecdote from my life itself. So after I finished 10th, I'd actually wanted to take up commerce, right? Because I was a more math heavy student. But my mother essentially pushed me towards science, saying that once you do science 11th and 12th, after 11th and 12th, you can do whatever you want, right? Now, I didn't believe it. I didn't believe her then, but actually, in hindsight, when I look back on this today, that's actually very true, right? Uh, while a commerce student will not be able to understand a lot of things that happen on the science front, uh, that advantage actually exists with a science student, given that you have a breadth of understanding with respect to a lot of things that happen in STEM, right? A lot of things, and at the end of it, science is very analytical, right? That analytical mind helps you in your legal education because at the end of it, it's a lot of analysis that you have to do with respect to how was something, what is the law, how was it interpreted before, and how can it be interpreted today. And that's a lot. That requires an application of an analytical mind, which I feel like a science student does really well in. Not to say that commerce students don't, but science students do really well in.
Right, this is one common question that a lot of people keep asking, and we tell them that, boss, the very idea that they are allowing anyone to take the exam itself means that there is no bias later on also.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And CLAD is such an exam that, irrespective of what your background is, everyone's at an advantage giving or coming into the exam, right? More than an advantage, everyone's on an equal footing, right? And given how diverse law itself is as a career, right? Each and every one has the option to choose what they want to do best after they get into law school. So if you're a science student and you want to function on the technology front, feel free. If you're a commerce student and you want to function on the business side of science ends of the things, feel free. You want to pivot towards the technology side of the things, feel free. I mean, like, so that's the advantage of law, in my opinion.
So probably one of the most versatile careers you will ever probably get into.
Hands down, no questions about it.
Rahul, our friend here, has a question: that is it necessary being from an NLU to be able to intern with a law firm in criminal law?
Uh, so, good question, right? So, I won't get into the fact whether it's criminal law, corporate law, or what. I'll just tell you the advantage of an NLU, right? Uh, it sets you apart, right? So, for example, uh, at the end of it, right? Obviously, you can build your career to an extent where your education does not matter. But right after college, it's a good way to get yourself identified if you're from a college that is actually recognized. So, for example, even in my case, right, it it was easier for me to get internships. It was easier for me to get a call with someone that I wanted to talk to, primarily because I was part of a fraternity or part of an alumni network that is extremely close knit. Right now, the thing about NLU alumni network, which also expands to say Symbiosis or Jindal today, is that everyone knows everyone. Right now. The 6 degree of separation, I don't know if all of you know it, that's absolutely true when you talk about lawyers, especially in the legal or the NLU fraternity. Now, so today, if I wanted to say get in touch with someone from NLS who graduated 25 years ago, I'd probably have to at best talk to two people, right? And then they'd be able to get me in touch, right? And so the biggest advantage that I have of going to a national law university is, one, the exposure, the kind of people that you will talk to, the kind of people that you will interact with are just going to be way above. It's going to set a standard which is above the rest, right? Which obviously is a fact. And the second is that it just gets you recognized and gives you an access to an alumni network that is very, very beneficial as you move ahead in your career. Does that answer the question?
Yes, yes, of course. And there's one more very interesting question, that is, if I get into a national law university, which is a government institute, will I be able to get in touch with, because these institutes come with a very traditional approach of teaching and all. Will I be able to embrace this kind of changes, these kind of changes in technology that are happening vis-a-vis my admission in a Jindal Law School or a Symbiosis?
That's a good question, right? I will not deny the fact that Jindal has great infrastructure, but in Jindal also has, in my personal opinion, Jindal also has a very large intake, a batch intake that essentially sometimes dilutes the actual crowd that you should be interacting with. The advantage with national law universities is that while it might be traditional education, uh, I mean, not just my college, but every national university that I know, we conduct, or the students themselves have a body that conducts seminars on a very, very regular basis, which happens very on a, I mean, like at least in the time that I was in college, happened on a weekly basis. Now, even in the pandemic, I see that my juniors are conducting it at least twice a week, right? Remotely on Zoom webinars. They're calling partners from law firms, they're calling CEOs from companies, they're calling judges from the Supreme Court, right? So, irrespective of the traditional education that happens in the classroom, the kind of education that you are exposed to outside the classroom is just very, very global in nature, especially in a national law university. And uh, uh, vis-a-vis the cost in a national law university, it's 100%. I mean, like, there's not even a question as to whether you should prefer an LLB over anything else.
Yeah, true that NLUs are the first preference of many students, but at the same time, uh, limitation of the seats, and people get into
I'll add,
colleges like
yeah.
Symbiosis.
So let me just add to that, Seekan sir. So, uh, like I did say that Jindal, their batch intake is large, but their infrastructure is amazing, right? They get in professors from Harvard and your Ivy League colleges in America to come and teach, right? The kind of internships and events that the college themselves sponsor for their students is very few national law universities can compete with that, right? So Jindal, Symbiosis, right? Again, they're just the fact that they have access to that kind of infrastructure is something which is why you talk about those two colleges on the same breath as national law universities. Otherwise, you wouldn't.
Right, absolutely. There's always a distinction between a government college and a private college, but everyone has, each of the institutes has its own pros
They're
and
as
cons.
good
Right,
options to go to. Yes.
right. Yeah. So Karthikeya Singh is asking that he comes across as an introvert in the first place. How good is law for introverts is the first question, and there is also, is doing LLM after LLB required to work abroad?
Uh, Good question. So, I mean, introvert or extrovert, I mean, like, trust me, a law school life will just change the entire thing, right? So, uh, uh, I mean, I don't know how to answer that question very honestly. So, law schools for anyone, right? If you're an introvert, great, not a problem. I mean, you can always get into law school, and it's an educational experience other than, I mean, like, that's what, right? So, what I've been stressing on is the fact is that the the amount that you learn outside the classrooms is just a lot. And given that you're doing this for 5 years, you can just imagine how much you're learning. And the kind of people that you'll be interacting with on a regular basis actually just makes you very, very competitive, right? And just increases your standards as an individual. With respect to is it required to do an LLM after LLB to work abroad? The answer to that question is yes, unfortunately. I'll tell you why. Right now, the reason because is whenever you try and go and like medicine, for a lawyer to go and practice abroad, there are certain local jurisdictional qualifications that you'll need to acquire before you can actually practice in that particular area. Now, there are certain colleges in India where what happens is that foreign law firms come in and then recruit directly and then take you abroad, and then you can work while you apply for these colleges. Alternatively, what you could do is that you could apply for an LLM and then at the same time gain that qualification while you're studying for an LLM, and then gain an opportunity to work with a foreign law firm. Does that answer the question? I understand that it could have been maybe like it was a little circular of an answer. I'm more than happy to clarify if required.
Pretty much does. What would be the impact of COVID on law firms? This is because everything that we have been talking about for the last 4 months has always included COVID as a discussion. So, a mandatory question.
Right. So I'll give you this from experience, right? So I have a lot of friends who are currently working with law firms, right? And none of them actually have, I mean, like, other than the fact that everyone's working from home, there is no other difference, right? Legal matters still come in. Now that we are seeing a closer, now that we are seeing some form of normalcy coming back with respect to the investment market and with respect to general corporate functionings, work is picking up in all law firms. I have not seen any law firm actually fire any of the law firms that I know of fire anyone who's working over there. So impacted by law firms have actually not been impacted by COVID as much, right? Obviously, it's largely to do with the manner in which it has been managed before. So that means that they've generated revenues to make sure that they have funds to tide over like tough times. But with respect to the amount of work that they're getting, it's actually increased, if not reduced, primarily because now the existing customers are also saying that, okay, fine, how do we manage the COVID situation, along with more customers coming in saying that, okay, fine, we not just want to manage COVID situation, but we also want to understand how do we enter this market, right? And or how do we take up this dispute in the court, right? And stuff like that. So COVID as such has not really, it's not really impacted law to that big an extent. Hearings are now happening online, right? Litigation's taken sort of a hit, right? Sure, because now lawyers are not able to appear in front of court more as often. So, and plus the number of cases that get listed in front of courts are reduced. But again, by the time you guys are going to graduate, this should not be an issue anymore, right? And transactional law, which is like law firms, corporate law firms, they've not really taken too much of a hit. The ones who've actually managed their businesses well.
So probably legal industry is the only industry that appears to be recession free in this time.
Even technology as an industry is doing really well. I'm saying this from experience, right?
Yeah. So the very point that we are meeting on Zoom.
yeah.
Is an illustration.
Absolutely.
Right. So from a mentoring point of view, say a student, there is a question also in the chat that say a student has got into Symbiosis kind of a college, but he is unable to crack CLAT, and it's always an aspiration to get into a national law university. Would you suggest them to join Symbiosis straight away, or would you ask them to leave or drop for a year?
So I'm going to speak from personal experience here, right? If you think it's worth a shot, feel free to drop and take another hit at the exam. You're never going to get this opportunity again in your life, right? So think about it this, right? I mean, how many times will you get to do your undergraduate degree, right? Once. Do you want to do it right? Yes. Do you think it's worth dropping a year to do it? Absolutely, right? In my opinion, absolutely. A lot of parents would disagree, right? But in my mind, absolutely, it's definitely worth a shot. Is it, I mean, like, suppose that if you don't want to take this risk and do you want to get into symbiosis, definitely go ahead, right? Uh, for your information, a lot of partners at the top 4 law firms in the country today are from symbiosis, right? So they are also very well connected. The level of education is really good. Symbiosis Pune has a fantastic recruitment scene, primarily because they're so close to Bombay. Uh, as a college, it's great. Do you think you'd want to get into a college like say NLS, Nalsar, NUJS, NLU Delhi, NLU Jodhpur? Sure, definitely take a shot for it. Or HNLU, of course. I mean, I don't want to forget my own alma mater in this list, but definitely worth a shot at taking like CLAT again. But if you think that uh, you don't want to waste a year and instead want to go ahead and then finish this education, then go for it. But just keep one thing in mind, irrespective of which college you're in, it's very important that academically you do well, right? It might not be important for the immediate job that you get right after college, but for the lot of you who are asking me questions about, okay, fine, I want to do a master's, or maybe a few of you want to do a LLM, right? Maybe a few of you want to even get an MBA, right? For all of these places, your college is not as important as how important your academic career is.
So irrespective of the place that you go, if you put in enough hard work, I think you will be able to achieve whatever you wanted to achieve.
Absolutely, absolutely. And at the end of it, the college that you're going to, there are 2 factors that you're essentially required to evaluate the college on, right? One is what the infrastructure is like, right? Will it be able to give you an education that matches, uh, if not a global standard, but at least a national standard, right? For which, like Symbiosis and all the other national law universities say yes, right? Secondly, the other question that you are required to answer is whether uh, does it give you the advantage of an alumni network that you can benefit from after you graduate from the college? Again, the answer for with respect to colleges like Symbiosis and other national universities, including Jindal, right, is again a yes, right? So whenever you're evaluating with respect to which college you would want to go to, these are the 2 aspects that you're essentially looking to answer while you decide which college that you want to join.
One very, very essential question is, because most of us students who are attending this session are people who want to take their exam in say 2021 or 2022. uh, why कैसे? Why? How is it that you manage your boards, your JEE preparation or a CLAT preparation simultaneously? And how would you, suggest them to plan their day accordingly?
Right. So it's been a while for me, right? So it's been over 8 years since I actually had to deal with a problem like this. But I'll try and help you out with this. There is a lot of overlap with respect to your boards and CLAT, right? Now, math is obviously one thing that gets covered. Uh, Logical reasoning is at the end of it a lot of practice, right? So uh, all you have to do is like just spend maybe half an hour, 45 minutes every day, just practice a few questions and then see where you're going wrong, see where you're getting things right. At the end of it, the most advantageous thing is like having a error log, right? So that way you are able to ascertain that, okay, fine, I got a question like this wrong. Am I getting that same kind of question wrong again? So that means there's a conceptual problem. If you're able to improve on that, that means that you've gotten that concept right. If you're not able to improve on that, that means that you're missing out on that concept, right? So that error log is actually, I think, something that's very important. General knowledge is essentially just reading the newspaper every day, right? So this you should do irrespective of the fact that if you have an exam or you don't have an exam. One of the things that I think everyone should definitely pick up is just being aware of what is, or keeping up with what's happening around them, not just in your community, but also in the country, but also outside the country, right? So just reading the newspaper is it's supposed to be a habit rather than a routine, right? Or like, routine for an exam. So again, general knowledge is something that should be covered. So, and at the end of it, like logical reasoning, even legal aptitude is the same thing, where you just spend like half an hour, 45 minutes every day, just trying and practicing a few questions. And at the end of it, they're all bucketed under the same 4 or 5 umbrella terms, right? So constitutional, criminal, civil, family law, and stuff like that. So as long as you're maintaining an error log, which tells you that, okay, fine, I'm getting this right, I'm not getting this right, I need to maybe practice a little more questions on this particular subject, right? You should be good. So if you look at it over and above your board exams, you're looking to contribute at best an hour and a half every day for your CLAT, and I think that should be more than enough for you to like crack the exam. Obviously, this is other than the guidance that you get from Career Launcher on a day-to-day basis. And
Right.
I think the material that Career Launcher also provides is extremely comprehensive, right? So all of the things that I'm just telling you about that, okay, fine, this is something that you need to focus on while you're practicing. You can just always use the material that Career Launcher helps you out with for those practices, right?
Right. So I think we have taken most of the queries that were there. Uh, we have discussed about uh, various different aspects of using technology at law firms and how and what is it that as a law aspirant people should look forward to. Uh, and I sincerely thank you, Rishi, for the being available to us and getting in touch with us and conducting this session. It was a wonderful session. We could cater to more than 200 students who were attending this session on YouTube. So thank you so much for that. Uh, any closing remarks, Sikhen sir, if you have any?
Uh, um, I mean, just a piece of advice is that I wouldn't stress too much about what you're going to do after law school, right? Trust me, your entire idea will change as you go through law school, right? If you're interested in criminal today, you're most likely to be interested in corporate at the end of 5 years, and vice versa. Uh, just experience law school how you would want to experience education, and obviously keep an open mind, pay attention to your academics, and at the same time make sure that you have or you're building out a good extracurricular, write papers, participate in moot court competitions, go for debates, right? These are things that you will never get to do again, right? And given that you have 5 years for these things, that's a lot of time. Don't waste this opportunity.
Right. Thank you so much again, Rishi. So Anjali, we are closing the meeting here. Thank you so much for being there, and thanks a lot for your inputs, Rishi.
Thank you for the opportunity, Sequencer.